Final presenter before we break for lunch is Ms. Doly Begum of Keep Hydro Public. Please, please come forward. Welcome. You've seen the drill. You have 5 minutes opening address. Please begin now.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee members. My name is Doly Begum. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak here today. I recognize that as an immigrant woman who is a breadwinner of her working class family, I am privileged to have this opportunity. There are many Ontarians who do not have this opportunity to be able to attend this hearing. As the Keep Hydro Public Coalition Coordinator, I'm here for not just my working class family, but also for those families across the province who will be affected by Bill 132. I represent the views and the interests of tens of thousands of people who have joined our campaign and voiced their concerns. Keep Hydro Public is supported by community groups, labor organizations, environmental groups, anti-poverty groups, student organizations, amongst others. We're proud to be the voice of thousands of Ontarians who joined the movement to fight against the privatization of Ontario's biggest asset, Hydro One. Every day we receive messages from family members across Ontario. Lorraine Duclos from Thunder Bay wrote that the 8% rebate introduced was an insult because it gave her about $6.22 off her hydro bill. And now you want to add 17% to that. Cindy Smith-Claus from Alexandria wrote about her hydro struggles. As a single-income woman who lives in a farmhouse heated by hydro, her electricity bill is about $400 per month, which is half her paycheck. And delivery charges are about $167. And in the cold winter months, her hydro costs were between $800 to $900. If Cindy is late paying her bills, she receives notices that her service would be interrupted. Cindy spent her entire winter months worrying sick that if she missed a payment, her electricity would be cut off. Compared to the many other Ontarians, Cindy was actually lucky because there are residents who did face disconnections, families that had to go out in the cold winter weather to cook because they had no electricity at home. Unfortunately, I cannot share the countless stories with you within my 5 minutes limit. But if you ask Lorraine or Cindy or the thousands of families, they will tell you that they are outraged by this proposed hydro plan. These families know that after this election, the next election, and after the 4 years stated in this plan, electricity bills will skyrocket even faster than they have in the last few years. In addition, this plan will force Ontarians to pay hydro bills that will be even higher than it would have been without this borrowing scheme for over the next 20 years. There is nothing fair about this fair hydro plan. Is it fair that now people are paying for the mismanagement of the Liberal government? And more importantly, is it fair that the public and the future generation, our children, will be forced to clean up the Liberal government's dirty laundry? Also, the government's plan will do nothing about the underlying cost of hydro, such as the billions in private profits that have been added to the hydro bills during the Liberal government. The Liberal government sold off the last chunk of Hydro One. This means that the private investors control a majority of Hydro One. Private investors are interested in private profits, not public needs. Without ownership of Hydro One, there is no public control, there is no accountability, there is no public interest. I appreciate that the government wants to reduce people's hydro costs. Therefore, let's be honest. Let's honestly assess the numbers together. Let's provide updated figures to the opposition parties and the public. You wouldn't want people to sign up for a payday loan without knowing the A to Z for this loan. Then why does the government want ratepayers to sign up for an expensive loan without letting the public look at how much it'll cost us in the long run? This plan is not fair. This does not fix the hydro issues. It is a short-term gain and will cause a lot of long-term problems. We need to bring back public power and make it away from the hands of private investors. Public power that is at cost, like it should have been. That is the real solution to help Ontario families. On behalf of Keep Hydro Public Coalition, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Begum. Begin with the NDP, Mr. Tabbins.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Begum. I appreciate the presentation you've made today. Can you tell us if you see any potential for a privatized system to actually provide people with affordable hydro?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I'm very surprised that after 83% of Ontarians who oppose the privatization of hydro, the government went ahead and sold more than 50% of it, and that's shameful.
And are you surprised that this government, instead of actually dealing with the root causes like privatization, is looking to borrow huge amounts of money to, for a short time, keep rates a bit lower?
It's not fair at all. I think the problems were the energy contracts, the problems were the delivery charges. There are so many inherent problems with our system. We need reform. But instead what we're doing is getting a payday loan and extending and deferring and doing all these things that people don't even understand. We've got people in rural Ontario asking us what's going on. After 3-4 years, what's going to happen? Are my children, my grandchildren going to pay even more? Which is what's going to happen.
And do you, when you say 83% of the population is opposed to this, and I have a sense from my own writing going door to door, there's very strong opposition. What's your evaluation of public sentiment based on? Are you looking at public opinion polling? Are you looking at the reaction people give to your message? Could you expand upon the public sentiment on this?
For sure. We've done both. We have had polling done. We have environmental polls done, which showed 83% of Ontarians were opposed to the sale of Hydro One. And throughout my campaign, we've gone to Thunder Bay, Sudbury, all these different areas of the province where people came up to us and said, no, this is the golden goose. This is the only biggest asset we own, and we do not want it to be privatized.
Okay.
Yeah, do you think it's fair to put a $40 billion debt on the backs of our kids and our grandkids?
I'm sorry?
Do you think it's fair that this is going to put $40 billion debt on the back of our kids and our grandkids?
Absolutely not.
And and this is something that I think was probably bothers me more than anything. Do you think that the Liberal government should have went across the province on Bill 132 to the residents of Ontario and let them have their say by holding town hall meetings and having this discussion? Because I think if anything upsets me about this is that Ontarians are not having a chance to discuss this yet. They're going to feel the pain for the next generation.
Absolutely, they should have. If they're going to call it a fair hydro plan, then that would have been a fair thing to do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. The government side, Mr. Delaney.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. Although I don't have any questions for this particular deputant, I would like to put on the record the fact that Ontario retains absolute control over Hydro One, whose oversight now moves to the Ontario Securities Commission, where similar scale and scope enterprises are in fact overseen, such as our banking system, such as our transportation system. Finally, Chair, the bill proposes to reduce electricity rates by an average of 25% for all residential and small business ratepayers and manage increases going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. To the PC side, Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much, Ms. Begum. I'll just let you first, if you want to respond to that comment that there's absolute control over Hydro One in our electricity sector.
Thank you very much for that. Well, before I forget, I know for publicity's sake, it sounds great to say 25%, but I find it really funny how we introduced the 8% HST rebate first, and then another 17%, and then for publicity's sake, we say 25% altogether. So that aside, just for the record. And in terms of the OEB, I don't think over the last decade, more than a decade, we've had anything good happen. Hydro rates went up, skyrocketed, and people have suffered. And what we really needed was a hydro reform, and obviously the government did not have control over it. The government did not do a good job. There was mismanagement, and people are paying for that. And what we're doing right now with this plan is another mistake. And in 4 years or so, in 2021 or 2023, we'll be paying for that.
And is it fair, do you think, that rates that went up between 200 and 400% to give a 25% discount of your own money is fair?
It's a little comical. I think it's funny that when someone like Cindy pays $800 for her hydro bill and she gets a 25% rebate, you're not looking at delivery charges, you're not looking at all the things, and she gets notices saying, we'll cut off your power.
And do you think it's fair? We've received some letters, one from my Chester grocery store, an independent grocer, and they were told by the government that small business grocers do not meet the government's criteria for small businesses and hence do not qualify, although they were told in debate that they were actually going to be allowed. They all put over 50,000 kilowatts onto the grid. They use that and consume that, and yet they're not eligible for the 8% rebate. Do you believe that's fair?
Absolutely not. I think if the government's going to use facile arguments to push their agenda, that's very shameful. People have suffered, especially small businesses have suffered, and we've received messages from not just residents, but also small businesses that are closing down because of hydro rates.
In those grocery stores, absolutely. I mean, they have to run the freezers. They can't turn it off overnight. I mean, it's a 24/7 job. I mean, 80 to 85% of Ontarians and PCs agree with you. Do not sell Hydro One, and yet they steamroll that. We agree that it's not fair. We agree that the mismanagement is actually the challenge, and all you're doing is deferring the cost out onto the next generation. We definitely agree that $40 billion debt onto our next generation is not fair, that it's short-term electioneering and is not going to be anything in the long term, and yet they're still signing green energy contracts knowing that we have a surplus of energy. None of this is fair. We certainly support your thought process.
Well, definitely, Keep Hydro Public Coalition definitely supports green energy. I think it's
We do as well, but not the way they've done it.
Definitely not the way they have done it. And I want to congratulate the NDP for making a commitment to buy back Hydro One. I think it should be in the public hands, and I hope the PC will make a similar commitment like this.
Can you share with us how they're going to buy $9 billion?
Thank you, Mr. Walker, and thanks to you, Ms. Begum, for your deputation. Committee is in recess till 1 p.m. in this room.